Welcome. This is the state of mental health, writing through tough times. And I'm Ryan Matthews. I'm the director of content at Talkspace, a company working to broaden access to mental health care via convenient and inexpensive online therapy. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month, as some of you may realize, and it looks pretty different this year. So we wanted to do something a little bit different and let people, all of you, tell your stories. I think that's really important, just being able to talk about what the world is like right now. So tonight we are bringing the wonderful Diana Spechler, who is the author of the novels Who by Fire and Skinny, and of the New York Times opinion series Going Off. Diana has written for the Wall Street Journal, GQ, Esquire, Playboy, Harper's, Paris Review Daily, Tin House Open Bar, Plowshares, Travel and Leisure, Washington Post, and many other publications. She has received awards from Yaddo, the Steinbeck Fellowship, A Room of Her Own Foundation, and elsewhere. And she is a 7-time Moth Story Slam champion. And tonight she'll be teaching a class on telling your mental health stories. I'm going to turn it over to Diana and look forward to a great night. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Diana.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Thanks for being here, everyone. It is so great to see all of you, and it's so lovely to know that there's still enthusiasm for my classes, even though I keep doing them. So I'm just really happy that you're all here. If you're able, we are raising money for Witness to Witness. It's an organization that provides mental health relief for frontline workers. That is a very brief summary of all the amazing things they do. So if you can spare even a little, it would be great. If you can't, no worries. I know you would if you could. Ryan's going to send you the donation link. It's also in your, I guess, in your Zoom invitation. If you already have donated, thank you so much. I also want to mention that if you like the class I'm about to teach and you would like to go deeper with me on your writing, I work with students privately. So feel free to shoot me a message and I'll send you a list of my services and rates. If you would like to take a full-length course with me, you can sign up for an 8-week essay writing class that I'm starting to teach next month. So I will send you guys the link to that when we're doing a writing exercise. Okay, so I think Ryan mentioned that everyone is muted, and that is intentional. If you at any point realize that you're not muted, please mute yourself. There's always a lot of background noise in people's homes, even if they don't realize it. So let's just make sure that everybody can concentrate and hear me well. If you want to ask questions, there will be times when I stop to take questions or I'll call on people to read. I'll ask for volunteers. If that happens, I can't see all of you. Some of you don't even have your video on, but also I can only see one page of participants, which means that half of you are invisible right now, at least. So please use the hand raising feature, because if you physically raise your hand, I'm not going to know. So to find the hand raising feature, go to the bottom center of your screen where it says participants, and you click that, and then a bar will open up on the right and you'll have the option to raise your hand, and then I can call on you. So if you've never practiced that, you can go ahead and do that now. If you've raised your hand and I've called on you, or if you've raised your hand and I didn't have time to call on you and we've moved on from the topic you had something to say about, please remember to lower your hand. There's next to the raise hand feature, there's also a hand lowering feature, or else I'm going to be calling on you when you have nothing to say, which winds up wasting time. So let's try to keep that to a minimum. As many of you might have noticed, there is also a chat feature. So you're welcome to use the chat feature to speak to one another during the class. If you want to send a message to me or a message to the whole group, that's fine, but just know that until until I'm taking a break because you're writing, I won't see those messages. And finally, as Ryan just mentioned, this class is a partnership with Talkspace. So I'm super grateful to them for making this happen. And I've been writing for the Talkspace blog for a few months, and Ryan is my editor there. So he's moderating the class as well. He's the best, and he has offered to publish the writing that comes out of this class on the Talkspace blog. So after this class is over, if you wind up writing something that you would like to see up at Talkspace, you can email that to Ryan. It's just ryan.matthews@talkspace.com. He's going to send you his email address in the chat now. Okay, so the class today is called Writing Through Tough Times. It's 2 hours long. It's going to be a mixture of lectures, writing exercises, and interaction using the hand-raising feature. So first, what I would like to do is talk about why writing can be helpful during hard times. I'm going to give you 5 reasons. Writing is a great escape. I would say that might be number 1. Netflix is also a great escape, but it's a different kind of a great escape. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. 2 is that writing can generate for you a sense of purpose and focus, and both of those things are hard to come by when we're struggling. 3 is that writing can help you make sense of the hard times. I think this is especially relevant right now during COVID, because we're living through something we've never experienced and our brains don't know how to contextualize it. So our feelings are probably all over the map these days. Sometimes we don't know what we're feeling, or we don't understand why we're feeling what we're feeling, or we have a feeling about our feeling. So writing is a good way to untangle that knot and examine each individual thread, and that can bring us a lot of peace. 4 is that what's cool about making art in general, not just writing, is that even if something horrific has happened to you, art is the opportunity to turn that horrific thing into something beautiful, and that takes a lot of the sting out of it. And then finally, if you wind up sharing your writing, which by the way, you might not choose to do, and that's fine, it's a way to connect with others, which is potentially the best mood booster there is. So later on, we're going to talk about how to use our writing to best connect with others, with readers. So using the hand-raising feature, here's a good opportunity to practice your hand-raising. Can anyone share a time that was tough when writing helped you through? And maybe tell us how exactly it helped you. Leah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I have chronic migraine syndrome, and I grew up with it, having chronic pain. And as like a teenager and a young adult, I thought that it was kind of my fault, and I blamed myself for it a lot. And then one of my English teachers got me involved in writing about it, and kind of writing about it creatively made me think about some of the things people were actually saying to me, and kind of made me realize that it didn't make a lot of sense. And that like the way I was blaming myself about it didn't make a lot of sense.
I think that's an amazing example. What you're talking about is reframing, which is something I should have put on the list originally. Writing allows us to reframe, which can be really helpful when the thing we're writing about is something that's caused us a lot of, in Leah's case, unnecessary pain. So excellent example. Anyone else want to share one? Okay. So Writing can be really helpful during tough times, but unfortunately, as many of you might have noticed, it can also be a challenge to write during tough times. So let's talk about a few reasons why that is. One, when we're struggling, it can be hard to concentrate. It's hard to tune out all the outside noise. Two, when we're struggling, we might feel hopeless. So writing can seem pointless because when we feel hopeless, everything seems kind of pointless. And then when we're struggling, we're hard on ourselves. So it's not easy to give ourselves permission to write. And we'll talk about what that means in a couple minutes. But let's go through those 3 reasons one by one and try to tackle them. First, okay, it's hard to concentrate. It's hard to tune out all the noise. COVID times are noisy times in particular, right? The news is just a dystopian nightmare. We're hearing a lot of conflicting messages. There's a lot of fear and anxiety and anger, and it's just very loud. Plus, it can be hard to tune it out because we don't want to miss any crucial information. We're in global crisis and we want to be tuned in. So I'm just going to first talk to you about some practical skills for how to concentrate on your writing. The first is to schedule it, which might sound strange, but you schedule it like it's a doctor's appointment, right? I know so many people tell me that the reason they can't write is because they don't have time, but you probably have half an hour somewhere in the week that you can schedule in. So whether it's half an hour or 3 hours a day or whatever you want, whatever you can manage, put it on the schedule, and then when the time comes, lock yourself in a room without distractions. That means no internet, no phone, no people. Those hours are just for you and the blank page. So if you are in a room without any distractions at all, you can either use that time to think or to write, right? Those are the only options. And chances are you're just going to get something done because it's boring to sit in a room and think after a while. 2 is to read like a writer instead of like a reader. And what I mean by that is that if you pick up a suspenseful novel right now, you're going to get sucked into that story and not be able to put it down. And that doesn't give your own story a chance to bubble up. By reading suspenseful novels or watching a suspenseful series, you're shutting out your own creativity, right? You're replacing it with someone else's creativity. I'm not saying don't ever read that stuff. I'm just saying that if the goal is to write, if the goal is to focus on your own writing, consume writing that makes you want to write. For me, that's voice-driven writing, the stylists. Right now, I'm rereading Amy Bender. If you haven't read her, you should read her. She's fabulous. I've read all of her work, so I'm not getting sucked into the stories, but the sound of the narration, her voice gets me kind of buzzing, right? And then I want to write. Beautiful poetry is also a good option. You have to figure out what your writer porn is. That's what I call the writing we read to get in the mood to write, writer porn. And once you're in the mood to write, concentration comes a lot more easily. And my third suggestion for your concentration, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to meditate. I think everyone probably tells you to meditate. I would never do that to you. I was going to say have an accountability buddy. That could mean a lot of things. It could mean you and a friend who want to write get on a Zoom chat at a scheduled time every week and write together. That's actually kind of fun, makes it less lonely. Or it could mean that at the end of each day, you have agreed to email each other your word count. Whatever it means for you, having a goal and accountability can be really helpful when it comes to buckling down and writing. Okay, so those are a few concentration tips. Now let's go back to the second reason why writing during tough times can be hard, and that's hopelessness. When we feel hopeless, it's easy for our thoughts to land in self-sabotaging places, right? Like, well, the world is ending, so what's the point of writing a story? Or like, nothing matters, so why would I sit down and pen a poem? Okay, so for feelings of hopelessness, I would say to first reach out to a therapist and use all the self-care tools, right? Make sure you're getting sunshine and exercise and sleep and healthy food and connecting with friends and whatever, etc. But second, just in terms of the actual writing, remember that there is an answer to what's the point, right? We went through a list of reasons why writing is important during hard times, so you can refer back to that first. And second, you'll want to make your own personalized list and have that as a touchstone. Why is writing important to you? Why do you feel it needs to be done? Maybe the answer to that is very simple. You feel off kilter. I mean, in my case, I feel off kilter if I'm not writing. That's it. Which is what a lot of people say about working out. It's just like, I feel gross if I don't do it, so I do it. That's how writing is for me. For me, that's usually enough. Okay, so what is it for you? It could be that you have something to say and you need to say it. Or maybe you want to impress your love interest. Right? That's the idea of having a muse. Or you want to tell the story of a loved one who died to honor her memory. Okay, so I want you to take a minute now and write down 3 reasons why it's important to you to write. Would somebody be willing to share a reason? Use the hand raising feature so I can see you. Cora, hi.
Hey, Diana. Well, the first is, like you said, just off kilter. It's like working out. I was gonna say though that, like, I feel like for me, there's a certain level of control that is not healthy in human relationships that I really love having in some dimension of my life, and if I can just sort of like be so precise and controlled and controlling in my writing life, I feel much less controlling in the rest of my life.
Okay, I think that's an awesome example. It's something to have control over in a world where we don't have control over much. I love that for sure. Okay. Robin.
Yeah.
Lady.
Yeah. Well, I have a story I want to tell. I have a story about McCarthyism and anti-Semitism, and I want to make sure that, and a specific area where I grew up, and I don't want it forgotten. It's so similar.
I love that idea. I love that. So, yeah. So it's an effort to preserve history. How beautiful is that? Amazing. Thank you. I mean, I have to call on David Crabb.
Hi.
Because he's my best friend. So
yeah, we're besties. So I love those two answers. I feel like this is so like base, but the bulk of the writing I do is nonfiction. So I feel like I just really enjoy that act of revisiting a memory and feeling like I've accurately recreated it, but zhuzhed it up for the page.
Yes,
There's
zhuzh.
something about finalizing a little story or even a chapter that comes from my true life in a way that when it's done, I'm like, oh, awesome. It's like offloading it.
Yes, offloading it. I love that. So kind of just getting rid of something, unburdening yourself in a way. There's just a kind of satisfaction to it that you can't really get doing anything else, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, I know so many of you have your hands up. I'm going to ask you to lower them, and I will try to get you on the next thing. Okay, so those are great examples. Okay, but let's go back to the third item on the list of things that stop us from writing, and that is permission, not giving ourselves permission. It can be very hard to give ourselves permission to write. Whether or not we're in particularly tough times, it can be very hard to give ourselves permission because we have all kinds of nasty voices swirling around in our heads. I'm going to tell you some of the things that the nasty voices say, and you could think about whether or not you've ever heard them. Okay, I'm just going to read you some of the very common ones. I've been teaching writing for a very long time, so I think I've heard pretty much all of them, but here are some. I'm not a writer. What's the point of writing? I'll never be as good as whoever, Faulkner, Toni Morrison, whoever. Who do I think I am? That's a big one. Who do I think I am? I shouldn't be writing. I should be doing X, the dishes, my taxes, my job, whatever. This is a waste of time. This one I usually hear from women. Writing is narcissistic. I should be doing something for others. I suck, or just some other general insult that doesn't have much to do with writing. I'll never get published. I can't tell you how many students I've had who have written like 2 essays in their whole life, and they tell me I'll never publish a novel. That's like if I decide to go for a run for the first time and I lace up my sneakers and then I'm like, never mind, I'll never be an Olympic runner. So I go back to the couch, right? It's like, how do you know? Okay. So who can add other nasty sentences to my list? What are the voices in your head telling you? Use the hand raising feature, please. Catherine Dean.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All right.
I like your mountain background. I'm totally convinced.
It would be nice. Okay, why I can't write? Because I don't ever seem to finish anything. And I lose the point of the story.
Yeah, what's the point? I'll never finish anything, so.
Well, no, it's not what's the point, I won't finish it. It's what's the point of the story. I meander off.
Okay.
Something.
I see what you're saying.
Okay.
So it's not so much a voice in your head as it is just the fact that you.
It's a technical thing.
So yeah, so we probably need to talk some other time about structure and character desire. Because that can drive a story all the way through to the end, knowing for sure what your character's desire is, right?
Wow. Okay.
We've talked about that before. Who else has a good example? Let's see. Any more hands up that I'm not seeing? Okay, I think we can move on. Thank you, Catherine. You don't have to share them, but I'm sure you have some on your list and you can continue compiling that list. So to give ourselves permission to write, we have to get rid of those voices. So how do we do it? Well, think about one of the sentences that plagues you. I'm wasting my time. Who do I think I am? Whatever your sentence is that plagues you. And try to identify where and when and from whom you first heard it. I'm going to give you an example. When I was little, I was a gymnast and I loved gymnastics. And one day I went to my gymnastics class and the coach saw me coming in and said, "Here comes Diana N.T. Spechler." And I said, "What is N.T.?" And he said, "No talent." I know, I see jaws dropping. It was totally horrible. Anyway, I forgot about it because I didn't become a gymnast. So I forgot that it even happened. But then when I first learned about this exercise, I realized that one of my voices was, "You have no talent." That was always in my head. And I had been told otherwise about my writing, but it was still always in my head. And I traced it back to this day, this guy in my gymnastics class. And once I realized what it was, that it had come from him, had nothing to do with my writing, and honestly probably had nothing to do with me. I'm sure I was a very talented gymnast. I was able to let it go, right? Because it didn't belong to me and it suddenly seemed absurd that it was trapped in my head. Okay, so who can connect their sentence to the person they first heard it from? Use the hand raising feature, please. Having trouble unmuting you, Carrie. I don't know why.
Because I muted myself.
Oh, okay. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, how are you?
It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I had just started writing like 3 years ago, so I'm all new to the process. And I had a writing professor tell me that your voice is very strong, but your grammar is so bad. And but your writing's not strong enough to get over the grammar problems. So you need to go take a grammar class. And I was in my undergrad and I graduated in 2018. So I had been out of school a few years, 20 years, 25 years. So I didn't remember where all the commas go and stuff. But so that sticks in my head often. I have a jar actually with that professor in it.
A jar?
Yeah.
You keep him in a jar?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I keep her in a jar. So
you keep her in a jar. So
yeah.
So yeah, that's a great way to block ourselves and tell ourselves that we don't have permission to write, is to think, well, what's the point? My grammar problem is never going to it's never going to overshadow, my writing isn't strong enough.
It isn't strong enough, right?
So. Yeah. So that's a great way to just say, oh, well, I'm not going to write.
Right.
Good example.
But I was forced and I getting there.
Oh, you're there. Come on.
Because of you. Thank you.
Oh, I'm going to mute you again.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the idea is that you want to return those sentences to the people who put them in your head. They're not your words, they're theirs. So you have no business carrying somebody else's ideas and words around with you, especially if it's in any way stopping you. Okay, so identifying the original speaker is the first step. The second step, and this is something you can do on your own later, is to make a list of all the nice things people have said to you about your writing, or if not about your writing, then about your creativity or your intellect or whatever. And if you can stomach it, keep that list in your workspace. Because if you're going to take the insults to heart, you should take the compliments to heart too, right? Of course, the ideal is to get to a point where we believe that nothing anyone says about us, good or bad, means anything, because those comments are reflections of the speaker, not of us. But until then, we should not discount our advocates, right? It's very easy to think, oh yeah, he says I'm a good writer, but he's trying to get something from me. Or yeah, she says I'm interesting, but what does she know? Or yeah, she thinks my ideas are great, but she's my grandmother. You can trust your grandmother in this case. Put her on the list. Because if some stranger on the internet tells us we're stupid, or a gymnastics coach from 30 years ago tells us we're talentless, and we spend the rest of time feeling stupid and talentless, we should also be taking the compliments to heart, right? Okay, so replacing those voices is the path to giving yourself permission to write. There's a lot more to say on the topic of permission, but we have to move on. So if you are interested in the permission stuff and it doesn't feel too woo-woo to you, I would encourage you to buy, if you've never done it, the book, The Artist's Way. It's a 12-week creativity unblocking course. It's a game changer. The author's name is Julia Cameron. I'm sure some of you have already read it because it's a total cult classic. Does anyone have any questions so far? About any of this? Okay. So let's move on to writing. I want you to think about your biggest struggle in life right now. Maybe you're homeschooling your kids. Maybe you're going through a breakup. Maybe you're having a lot of COVID anxiety. Think about that one thing. And then I want you to think about one moment or scene that really encapsulates that struggle. So for example, a struggle in my life right now is that I've been making my living as a travel writer for the last 4 or 5 years. And as of last fall, I wasn't even living anywhere. I was just traveling, going from assignment to assignment, living out of a suitcase and writing stories. And it was awesome. It suited me so well. I was so thrilled about it. And now that career is obviously kind of over. And so at least it's over for a very long time. So I'm trying to parse out what that's going to mean. What's next? Who I am without that lifestyle, and not to mention without that income. So a moment that encapsulates that particular struggle in my life is that there's a resort in northern Mexico that I visited last year because I was writing about their chef. And I just had the best time there. I mean, swimming and snorkeling and eating ceviche on the beach and hiking. And anyway, that resort recently sent me a package in the mail, and it was tequila and limes and ginger beer so that I could make a cocktail and pretend I was having a cocktail on the beach at the resort. It was so nice. I mean, it was just such a lovely thing to receive, and it made me feel really good when I opened it. I made the cocktail. I made 3 of them. So I'm with my parents, so they enjoyed the cocktail. It was called a Mexico Mule. It was delicious, amazing. But I was like, wow, I was recently a travel writer in Cabo San Lucas, and now I'm making a cocktail in my parents' kitchen in the suburbs and pretending I'm a travel writer in Cabo San Lucas. And it was sort of funny, but mostly just upsetting to be reminded of how starkly different my life is now, and all the implications of that. Okay, so I would write about making the cocktail as a way to explore all my thoughts and feelings about how my life has changed since COVID. It would be sort of diffuse and maybe even boring to just decide to write an essay about how my life has changed since COVID. That's not really a topic, and it doesn't really give the reader anything to grab onto. But a scene that encapsulates it is a great starting point. So I want you to think of your struggle, and I want you to think of the moment or scene that encapsulates it and start writing that scene. And I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to do that. So I want to say something about the writing we're doing in here. The prompt I gave you is personal nonfiction, but writing about the exact hard time you're going through is not the only way to write through a hard time. If you write fiction, you find metaphors to write about your struggle. If you write poetry, you find images that represent your struggle. You also have the option of writing pieces that don't directly connect to your struggle at all. There's value in all of it, but in this class, we're working on pieces that are kind of on the nose, just as examples. After this class is over, I hope you'll keep writing and use whatever tools you learn in here to do the kind of writing you like best, whatever that is. Would anyone like to read and get a little feedback from me? Who wants to be brave? Catherine.
Okay, the garden. I have a tremendous interest in growing some of our food. I rarely go to the grocery stores anymore. The garden relaxes me and gives me joy. Each day as I water it, I'm amazed at the growth on my tomato plants, the size of the zucchinis, the happy sprouts of carrots. But for the life of me, I'm dead in the water, literally, with okra and basil. I save those plastic takeout boxes from the curbside delivery from local restaurants. They turn into little hothouses to start my sprouts. I planted okra, was actually going to ship plants to our son in Seattle because he's not there to start his own. I figured that when he returns from taking care of COVID patients in New York City, he can plant them. But let our sprinklers kill them. They drowned when the sprinklers sprayed water on the boxes. There are 4 holes in the tops. I didn't know they were there. All the okra seedlings drowned, but 1. And the basil went from robust green to limp brown overnight. I have just ignored them until this weekend when I decided to give it another go and found little green sprouts in the basil box. I have zombie basil starting now. We'll just have to wait and see about the okra.
Fabulous. You hit the nail on the head. So instead of talking about your anxiety about COVID and your son going to work in New York and all of that, you're talking about gardening. And we get the other stuff sort of subtextually, right? It comes in directly a little bit when you talk about sending stuff to your son, etc. But mostly what you're focusing on is the gardening, which is really interesting. We know that gardening is meditative and can be soothing. And so we imagine you doing that instead of freaking out, right? It's also one of the only things you can safely do during COVID, just be in your own garden. So yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you. Dante, I can't unmute you for some reason. I think you have to unmute yourself.
Hi.
Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I put my hand back down because I didn't want to do it, but I'll go ahead.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm going through right now is aging. And I've always had a handle on things and in control, and I'm a businesswoman, and now all of a sudden I'm starting to, feel it's slipping a little bit. And so I wrote, my eyes squinted as I stared up at the computer. In front of me was a white glow. I know there were letters there. I would have to sit closer, concentrate. I'm sitting too low. I can't do this. Frustration has made me angry at myself. I will never be as good as I used to be. The technology has gotten in the way. I am stumbling over it daily. Now, since our company was acquired by a tech firm, why do I have to be the master of technology when I'm an expert witness in my field? Life sucks.
Life sucks. That's the end. You know, that's great. You're talking about something big, aging, but you found a small container for it, which is specifically technology and how it's constantly advancing, which actually works as a great symbol for aging, right? That technology just keeps renewing itself. It's always young,
Mm.
but we keep aging and eventually can't follow it anymore. There was a line in there that was so powerful, kind of hit me in the gut, where you said, what was it? I'll never be as good as I used to, or as I was.
Yeah.
And I'll never be as good as I used to be. Yikes. That's very powerful. Great. Thank you. And we'll do one more, Leah.
Hi. So this is gonna make me sound like a terrible teacher, but I promise I'm better than this. But it says, I know I'm in trouble when my hand starts shaking. It's just a twitch at first, my pinky tapping the top of the L key on my computer, but it's enough to make me sit a little straighter and shove my hands underneath the table, out of sight from my webcam. It's my first video conference, but I know my students well enough to know they will look for the tremble in my voice, the twitch in my eyelid, and if they find it, it's blood in the water. Sure enough, I'm about 3 sentences in when the chaos starts. I've muted their microphones, but they start in on me with other methods. Typing the letter F over and over in the public chat, calling my class a bunch of bullcrap, posting links to inappropriate songs, even making obscene gestures at the webcam. I say they, but it's really just 3 students. The same 3 students who made memes of my face and passed them around the class, who cheered on their friend when he yelled the word pussy or tried to take his pants off in class. The same 3 students who bark at random intervals. The same 3 students who somehow take every ounce of teacherly confidence I've ever mustered and flush it down the drain. I scramble, clicking on random settings, searching for a way to turn off the video, or the chat, or kick someone from the room, or something, but I keep right-clicking by accident. The little gray box continually blocking everything, mocking me. 3 minutes of years and I can't even use my mouse. 3 minutes and I've forgotten 7 years of teacher training.
Oh, wow. That is pretty intense. Wow. So I think that first of all, that's just like incredibly emotional writing, and you didn't shy away from that, which just is what makes it so powerful and poignant, and I think makes all of us feel it. I was watching other people's faces while you were reading, so I know I wasn't alone in that. It was really, really good. So you're specifically focusing on I don't know what it was, like a Zoom chat, a Zoom class. Yeah. So you, instead of saying like, I've been having problems with these students, this is shaking my confidence as a teacher, we're actually seeing a scene where it's going to unfold. So I think that's a perfect example. You used as a container for a larger issue, one particular Zoom chat. And as you develop this piece or revise it, I would say you can even just jump right into the scene. You know, we can just immediately see an interaction, see one of these kids acting out. So yeah, that's awesome. Keep going with that. All right. Thank you, everybody. The next thing we're going to do is called digging. we're going to dig into our stories and find more layers. So what I want you to do is go back to the struggle you wrote about in the last exercise and write that down. So of course for Leah, it would be the problem students. For Catherine, it would be worrying about her son. For Dante, it would be aging. Okay, now I'm going to give you some fill in the blank sentences, and I'll just pause for a few seconds for you to fill in each blank. The feeling I associate with this struggle is blank. The first time I remember having that feeling in my life was blank. My struggle keeps reminding me of blank. Another thing about this struggle that's hard is blank. Another unrelated but significant thing that's happening in my life right now is blank. And finally, if I'm being totally honest, what's really bothering me about my current struggle is blank. Okay, take a look at your fill in the blank sentences. Does anyone have any new insight into their struggle that you want to share? Use the hand raising feature, please. Marissa.
Hi.
Hi.
So one of them that stuck out to me is my struggle keeps reminding me that I'm not good enough for other people.
My struggle keeps reminding me that I'm not good enough for other people. And that was something that you hadn't been thinking, you hadn't realized was bothering you about the struggle.
Right.
So it keeps bringing that feeling up.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great example. Okay. So now you know the struggle and you've gone deeper into the struggle. Okay, you've written, did you write 2 scenes about the struggle? You're doing, well, sort of. You're doing thoughtful, candid writing. Okay, that's very important. But what makes, oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Oh, okay, no. Before I do this, that's why I thought that, that's why I was reading, you've gone deeper into the struggle, you've written 2 scenes, because I didn't have you do this next writing exercise. So we're gonna go backwards. Pick another, actually, no, we're gonna skip it. Okay. What makes thoughtful, candid writing even more interesting to read? One answer to that is concrete details. Okay, what are concrete details? To identify concrete details, let's first discuss the opposite of concrete details. The opposite of concrete details are abstractions. And here's some examples of abstractions. I was having the best time. Things are just weird right now. He was giving me a bad vibe. Okay, what makes these abstractions? They're vague, they're non-specific, and they indicate that you, the writer, are not in control of the scene. Okay, for example, if you write, I looked at her house and knew that she was rich, what does that mean? One reader might picture a house built of marble on the ocean. One might picture an old sprawling house in New England. But maybe as the writer, you're picturing a very particular house that the owner built herself, and you know every detail of it. The Roman columns in the front, the Renaissance art in the living room, the frescoes in the ceiling, the silk beanbags in the family room. But the reader will not picture those things. The reader has hijacked your scene. You don't want anyone hijacking your scene. So to stay in control, you exchange abstractions for concrete details, okay? So instead of saying, I looked at her house and knew that she was rich, can someone think of an expensive house you've seen and use the hand-raising feature and describe it to us in a concrete sentence? No one? You guys are shy. Usually I get so many hands up. Okay, that's all right. Oh, Jamie's raising her hand. Jamie is never shy. Where are you, Jamie? Jamie? I have you unmuted, but I can't hear you for some reason. Okay. Okay, now aside from staying in control of the scene, there are other reasons why it's important to write with concrete details instead of abstractions. I think someone just asked me to clarify what abstractions are. Abstractions are the opposite of concrete writing. So like I said, I was having the best time. Things are just weird right now. He was giving me a bad vibe. I looked at her house and knew she was rich. Those are abstractions because they're not concrete, they're vague, they're non-specific. Okay, so there are other reasons why it's important to write with concrete details instead of abstractions. So let's talk about that. I want to make 5 points here. If you're taking notes, that's what I'm going to make 5 points. The first is details allow the reader to be inside the story with you. Okay, so back to the expensive house example. If you say the house looked expensive, you're keeping the reader outside of your experience. If you say the lawn was perfectly manicured, the walkway was just millions of tiny seashells, and every door handle was made of pearl, we infer expensive and experience the house the way you experienced it. That keeps the reader inside the story. 2, details force the reader to engage his own senses. That is, the reader is now picturing that seashell driveway and those pearl door handles. He sees them. Sight is, of course, one of the 5 senses. The others are taste, touch, hearing, and smelling. The more of your reader's senses you engage, the more tentacles you're using to draw him into the story. So if one goal of writing is to connect with readers, make them feel something that you feel, make them understand something that you understand, you want to engage as many of their senses as possible. The senses are points of contact between the writer and the reader. So use sensory descriptions to connect. 3, descriptions develop the writer's relationship to her subject. So if you, the writer, see a piece of pizza and you tell us the cheese was perfectly golden brown and the steam rose from it in thin curls, we're going to know based on the details you chose and the way you presented them that you think that's a good piece of pizza. If you describe the piece of pizza by saying that the sauce looked like ketchup and the cheese was a garish yellow, we'll know that you don't think it's a good piece of pizza, okay? So writer's relationship to the subject. 4 is descriptions tell us something about the mood or state of mind of the writer or of the narrator. Sometimes that's not the same thing. For example, if you're in love, you might walk outside on a sunny day and think about how beautiful the weather is, how the birds are singing so pleasantly, how the screams of the children are a delight. Okay, if you walk out into that same day with a bad hangover, you might notice different details or the same details, but you might present them with a different tone. The tone is the writer's attitude toward her subject. The sun is an insult, the screaming children are giving you a headache, why are the sirens so loud, etc. Same day, different perspective. And number 5 is that details convince. If you told me, oh my God, I got the cutest puppy, I wouldn't believe you. I mean, all puppies are cute, right? So I would probably think you're biased. You think your puppy is the cutest. It's not actually the cutest puppy. But if you brought the puppy to my house and I got to hold him and I got to touch his soft hair and look into his little brown eyes and put him against my neck where he was wiggling, I wouldn't need to be told that he was the cutest puppy, right? I would experience his cuteness for myself. So convince your reader with details. Grab him by the hand and drag him over to your house to meet the puppy. Any questions about any of that? One more note about description and detail is that it is easy to overdo it. Don't overdo it. Think of it as tasteful lighting, right? Not a floodlight. So then the question becomes, how do you know if you're overdoing it? How do you know if you are overdoing the details? Well, that's craft. One answer is that it just takes practice. You have to write and write and write in order to eventually acquire a decent sense of whether or not your writing sounds as good as it possibly can. But in the meantime, I'm going to give you some ways to improve your details whenever you read over a draft of your own writing. By the way, I want to say that when you're writing, in here, when you only have like 10 minutes, or if you're not on a time limit, but you're just writing at home, your first draft, you should try really hard not to think about any of this stuff. Everything that I teach you or that any other writing teacher teaches you, it's second draft and beyond information, meaning that the first draft should really just come from the unconscious. You should just kind of like spew it out. And then whatever is there, you can work with it. You can do the sort of math and science. But if you overthink a first draft, the writing is just going to be stiff. Okay, description should illuminate, not overwhelm. That is, if you use a description, the purpose should be to make something clearer. If it does the opposite, it's not working. Someone's not muted. Would you check and try and mute yourself if you're not muted, please? Thank you. Okay, read your sentences aloud slowly, one at a time. Sometimes hearing them aloud will allow you to pick out the clunky descriptions and get rid of them. Let other writers read for you. Okay, give your work to another writer. You can maybe do a trade. Maybe that writer has something that needs feedback as well. Other writers will notice things in your work that you're not noticing. But a note on that, you have to be careful about who you ask to read your writing when you're still writing it. I mean, you might not want to ask a friend who's always too nice or a family member who's always too critical to read your work, because the goal is for you to improve, right? Not to like think you're a genius or that you're worthless or something. So choose your readers wisely. I see a raised hand. Robin.
Are you suggesting that these other writers, and hi, Diana.
Hi, Robin.
Are you suggesting that these other writers read it out loud to you?
No,
or
no.
they just read it on their own
so that you can
and give you feedback?
Yeah.
So the latter.
The latter.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Okay, when you've written a description, you're going over your work, over your draft, ask yourself, can this description do heavier lifting than it's already doing? So what I mean by that is, does the description merely paint a picture, or does it also tell the reader something subliminally? In other words, does it work on two levels? For example, I could say, the sunset is orange and pink and fiery. And that would be true. And it would be descriptive. But it's a little weak. It's not doing much. If I'm trying to tell the reader something besides just what the sunset looks like, if I'm trying to get a tone across, right? Remember, tone is the writer's attitude toward her subject. I would need a more precise description. Here's a line about a sunset from a Louise Gluck poem that does some heavy lifting. At twilight, I went into the street. The sun hung low in the iron sky, ringed with cold plumage. What do we know from that description about the speaker's attitude toward the sunset? Please raise your hand. I'll read it again. At twilight, I went into the street. The sun hung low in the iron sky, ringed with cold plumage. Okay. It's interesting. Oh, wait. Okay, Tannery, I hope I'm saying that correctly, says not a warm, fuzzy description. Yes, exactly. It's not a warm, fuzzy description. And it's interesting because sunsets are objectively hot, right? Robin is saying ominous, dangerous. Tannery says she's feeling isolated and cold. Yes to both of those. So the sunset is objectively hot, but she's describing it in a way that makes it sound cold, right? Ringed with cold plumage. So yes, of course, she's not, happy and warm and fuzzy, as Tannery says. Okay, Leah says she seems detached from the sunset, not feeling the beauty. I would agree. Right? So we can tell a lot by how she described it. She very carefully chose those descriptions. So the description does some effective heavy lifting. I'm going to read you another description. This is not of a sunset, but this is a description of football games from a story called Pledge by Anton Disclafani. The helmeted men, the glittering cheer squads, the knee-to-knee camaraderie in the bleachers. Who can guess how the narrator feels about football games? Tannery's saying, yeah, she likes them. Robin's saying it's a closed circle. I'm not sure what that means. Leah says brotherhood. Maybe, yeah, she definitely, yeah, the camaraderie indicates that. Robin says everyone is in uniform of what they do. Yeah, it's a positive feeling. She's describing football games with positive feelings. Okay, one more description. This is from The Great Gatsby, in the moment before Gatsby gets to kiss Daisy for the first time. Remember, that's like, if you haven't read it in a long time, it's his whole goal, right? His whole reason for being is that he wants to be with Daisy. So Nick is the narrator, and he's watching Gatsby about to have that moment. Here's the line. So he waited, listening for a moment longer to the tuning fork that had been struck upon a star. That's the moment before he kisses her. What can we guess from this description about Nick and Gatsby's feelings about this moment? Throbbing anticipation, vibration, monumental, faded. Yep. Not sure what a tuning fork is. Okay, well, that's okay. So vibrating past the moment, yes. Okay, so we know that it's extreme anticipation, right? It's very exciting. Okay, excellent. Okay, I want you to go back to the scene you wrote in the first writing exercise. Identify all of the abstract sentences in there and make them concrete, okay? So you're exchanging all abstractions for concrete specifics. Go ahead. Okay, just take a minute to finish up. Sorry to disrupt you. Okay, would anyone like to read aloud and get some feedback from me? Robin.
Okay. I know you're not supposed to make excuses when you read anything. I just want to say this is rough.
Yes, of course. You had like 7 minutes. So.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so it's a chilly Wednesday morning. My hair is still wet, My eyes are tearing, but not for the reasons one might expect. And I'm wearing a mask at the last place I expect to be hosting a Zoom call, a graveyard. My Aunt Mary has just passed away at the age of 98. She's the last of her 7 siblings to go, and I'm trying to record my uncle, the priest, performing the ceremony as professionally as I can. He's a Roman Catholic priest with the most incredible spirit, and he's paying tribute to my great aunt in the most beautiful way. For weeks, I've worried about people around the world who would have to lay their loved ones to rest without a proper funeral, the chance to hug anyone, or mourn like they might normally do. My heart has gone out to people who can't have normal memorial services for their loved ones and can't properly say goodbye to them. And now I'm standing here, not just grieving, but documenting it. I'm standing on the grass near the casket while my cousin Michael passes around photos of my Aunt Mary throughout the years. Her teenage years, when her hair was brunette. I never knew her to have dark hair. I only knew her to have a wicked temper and white hair. I have to sort of figure that out. Pictures of her on her wedding day. This is where I stopped being more specific. Her wedding day and later in life. Since I'm recording, I'm trying to keep it together because I don't want the people watching to hear me cry. Nor do I want my relatives who will watch this video later to hear that either. One, because I'll be embarrassed, which is ridiculous. I'm at a funeral. But also because I want them to be able to hear what my uncle is saying, and I don't want to interrupt that experience, their experience.
Is that where you got?
That's all I got.
Yeah, no, that's great. You know, it's so beautiful and sad and timely and everything. And I like that even though there's a funeral happening, most of the action is really just going on in your head. It's mostly just cerebral processing, and that's the action in this piece, right? Which is, I think, a really nice, intimate way of writing it. So that's great. I do want you to keep working on changing out the abstractions for concrete details. So, for example, he had the most incredible spirit, right? Your uncle. I wanted to see that. I wanted to feel the spirit, his incredible spirit, and that would be, by giving examples.
Yeah.
Then there was something, the next sentence, something most beautiful way, my heart goes out, stuff like that. Those are the places that you can tweak. You just get rid of stuff like that. That's abstract, and swap in actual details. What does it look like when your heart goes out to people? Do you, I don't know, do you tear up? What happens?
I feel like a jerk thing. No, I don't. I think it's weird. I sometimes feel guilty that I have so much to be grateful for, and I just go to the other extreme where I'm like, what, I want to help these people. What can I do? Like, my heart is just, I just can't imagine what that would be like,
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I'm giving you, if I'm really answering that question.
You feel guilty. Yeah. Let's think of like a manifestation, a concrete example of what guilt looks like on you.
Let's see. Well, I'm Jewish, so that's obvious.
Or you're saying that, like, okay, another thing was that you said you just want to do something. So is there something you do when you feel like, oh God, I feel this is feeling so overwhelming, I just want to do something? What is it?
I mean, I'm always trying to make other people happy and smile and laugh.
So I
very proactive versus like letting my own feelings come through.
Yes. Okay. So was there a scene, a moment at that funeral where you tried to make someone laugh, or you tried to lighten the mood, or you said something to make someone smile because you couldn't take it?
Yeah, right. No, I think I was thinking of people like, so my, without getting into the weeds on this, but they said that my great aunt did not die from COVID, but she died in a nursing home, which leads me to believe like she wasn't even tested. And because she lived to be 98, I'm like, I feel like so grateful that we had her for so long. But then I'm thinking about other people who've lost people who are considerably younger. And so then I feel like worse for them.
Right.
I know it's not very specific.
I just wonder if you can think of an example, even if it wasn't from that funeral, when you were having a big feeling, maybe guilt or sadness or something, and instead of like, you know, sitting in it or whatever, you said something to make someone else smile.
I mean, for whatever this is worth, when I found out that she passed away, it was the night that I was hosting my very first online storytelling show. My uncle called my parents' house where I am by accident. And so I answered the phone and the show was starting in 10 minutes. And I was like, I don't have time to think about this right now because I'm hosting and producing the show. So
Okay.
so that's different, but yeah.
Well, it's different, but it's also honestly the scene I would prefer.
Well, it's higher stakes.
It's just amazing to think about. Like, I would love to see you write the scene of hosting a show 10 minutes after getting devastating news, because that is an exact encapsulation of how you deal with sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, if you deal with bad feelings, uncomfortable feelings by trying to make other people happy, what better example of that than Robin finds out her aunt has passed away and 10 minutes later essentially gets on a stage.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and there were like 110 people there, so which, you know, who knows what they're doing, but yeah.
I would love to see that personally.
I really was like, well, I mean, because you know what it is? It's like whenever I've hosted the show for 9 years, I've done a lot of stuff virtually. And I always know hosting a show, something always goes wrong. Every time, without fail, like for all the shows I've hosted, something always goes wrong. At no point did I think I'm going to find out 10 minutes before that my great aunt has just passed away. Like, I've just never, like, why would that even, I think more about things that are connected to the show, like a performer can't be there, or an ice cream cake has melted, or whatever, the subway's all fakaked, like, you know, but I never have thought, oh my gosh. And it was like hearing my uncle saying hello on an answering machine. Is anybody there? Hi. And I was like, oh, wait a second. I have to pick this up because he clearly has called the wrong number and something's up. He's like, please pick up. And I was like, oh my God. Anyway, the point is, like, I anticipate almost things going wrong all the time. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. But then I was like, oh, just puts you in a totally different mindset. But I totally see what you're saying in terms of like how I cope. And I'm just like, I'm going to force these feelings down and focus on putting on a good show. I would never have canceled it, but some people would have, you know?
Yes. Write that. That's the one.
Interesting. I love it. Thanks. I mean,
okay, I'm going to mute you and call on someone else. Jamie, I'm going to try to unmute you again. Did I get you? Jamie?
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but I can't see
you.
Oh, there you are.
Okay, good. Yes, good. No. Hi. Okay, yes, I realized what I had done, it was my fault. I was on twice before.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Cool. So I'll read what I wrote. Okay. I knew that living with Martin would be hard the first time I went to his house. He had piles of papers and unread magazines, jars of dusty marbles, and a back room whose door didn't open. On his bathroom counter sat a kombucha project so far gone that at first I thought it was a multi-layered sand sculpture in desert tones, and then I thought it was a place where he collected old candle wax. I finally just had to ask. After a year, we were in love, and despite all Martin's stuff that reminded me so much of my grandmother's accumulations, we decided I should move into his house. My girlfriends came over for a final dinner in my cozy single-gal cottage, and Meredith said, maybe you shouldn't give up this place. We could keep it as a clubhouse for all of us to escape, husbands, kids, all of it. We laughed, but Meredith and I made an eye contact that made me wonder if she hadn't been kidding at all. Martin's house should have been big, more than big enough for the two of us, but in it I felt I couldn't take a breath. 3 houses later, we're still together and it's still hard. So I took a break this winter. I rented an apartment in Mexico with a big patio and a view of the city. Before I committed, I asked my Airbnb host 2 important questions. How's the closet space? And is there room to stash my suitcase? The answers were yes and yes, because I knew that if my months away were going to give me the respite I craved, that I'd need to be able to put all of my stuff away. Not willing to risk this gift of time and space, I even bought a duffel bag that folded almost flat, so I'd be certain it could slide under the bed. I found places for everything and kept everything in its place. Every night, I put away my creative clutter and woke to a fresh slate with every sunrise. In my carefully controlled and curated space, I finished my memoir, ironically about my grandmother's hoarding, and started pitching agents and excerpts to magazines. I was on as much of a writing roll as I'd ever been on, but COVID cut my time early. I came home. Now, again, I can't find my breath, my motivation, my words, myself.
Okay. Amazing. So the jars of dusty marbles, the door that wouldn't open, those are exactly the details I'm talking about when I say I want everybody writing concrete details. Yes, what a mess. And we just felt the mess because Jamie grabbed our hands and dragged us into the mess, right? We didn't have to be told it was a mess. We saw it, we felt it, right? She engaged our senses. So that's excellent. I want you to keep swapping out abstractions for concrete details so that we don't have stuff like, I was on a writing roll. You know, what does that look like for you? I know that looks like to me, and there are a lot of details. What does that look like for you?
Well, so let's see. I said that, and then I guess I had already said, like, I'd finished my memoir. I started pitching agents, right? So like that was a writing role, I guess.
What is writing trance Jamie? You know, like, I remember one summer when I was on a writing tear, I wore the same dress the entire time. It was like this giant dress from the Gap. It was just so comfortable. And you know what I mean? I got superstitious about it. I just kept wearing it. So like, what does the writing role look like for Jamie?
Right. That's awesome. I love that. Cause it meant like waking up with the sun, like putting on the kettle so I could make coffee, and like getting back in bed and like it meant like total control of my space is what it meant. Right. Okay. I mean, and it's funny because in the second exercise where we did the fill in the blank, what I realized was like, it's all about control. It's all about me wanting to like control my space, control my control my words, control my future, control. And like in the time of COVID, we have very little control, right? We can't even make plans. Like,
right.
So, so I think you're right though. I mean, the writing role isn't just the specifics of the writing, right? It's like a routine, and it's like, no one's going to come in. I mean, yes, when you're living alone, things can happen, right? The hot water doesn't work or something happens, but you have a lot of control over your space and like who's in it and how you use it.
Okay, and so walk us through a little bit how we got from the boyfriend who's a mess to your like beautiful space in Mexico where you were able to finish a book, to your grandmother's a hoarder, to COVID.
Right. So I know, I mean, I didn't write the scene that we were instructed to write, right? I set up the scene. Like I set that up through, because I didn't feel like I could just drop in to where I am right now without backstory.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And maybe I should have, and I'm just sort of explaining it too much and making excuses. But I felt like if I told you, I'm in my my little writing room, and it's the only room in the house that doesn't have any of Martin's stuff in it, right? It works, but it doesn't have context for like the stuff and why. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's why I kind of set up, and now I sort of ended with the like, and now here I am, I'm back, and I can't, and I've lost my motivation.
I'm so fascinated by the detail that your grandmother was a hoarder and now your boyfriend is a hoarder.
Right, I know,
I'm
me
really
too.
stuck on that. So, and
Also,
the only way you were able to really get your work done was to leave the environment, right?
mm-hmm.
But now you're back and you want to be back, you want to be with him, but you're not getting your work done because you're in a hoarder house.
It's not like quite like that. It's not that. It's not that. It's I'm like distracted by like surfaces that have anything on them.
Okay.
You know, so like
opposite.
we're a tough match. Yeah, like we're a tough match. Like
Okay.
but like we now don't have, well, yeah, we don't have like stacks of magazines, we don't have that kind of stuff. But I don't have, you know, and then it's like, is it space or is it the time or is it just another beating heart in the house?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know, and just having like that distraction of a body, or maybe it's just an excuse.
I mean all of the above, right? They're not
right. Yeah.
So Jamie, I'm going to give you like a sort of an assignment as you move forward with this. I think that where the way to streamline and where the story is like there are so many couples and families right now that are in difficult situations because people are stuck at home. So it's like any problems that people already had are just amplified right now. And so that's what I'm seeing, is that you're in this situation where like you're always annoyed by the mess, but there's no break from it.
Right.
And I actually think I think that's what this piece is going to be. And I think you actually can jump right into it and then explain, like, even before COVID, this was bothering me so much, I fled the country, you know, just to get a space that was away from the mess and that was like clean and I was so productive, and then it was cut short, and I'm so, you know, upset and maybe resentful that it was cut short or whatever your feelings are, and now I'm back in the mess. And I think there are a lot of layers to delve into there. Like, what does it mean to live in a mess? Physically, psychologically, emotionally, where are the various messes? You know, beyond just the physical, beyond him actually just being messy, where are the other messes in this house? This house of love.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Let's see. Margie Morris.
Okay.
I don't know.
Is
it Margie or Margie?
It's Margie. And this is about a less monumental topic than others. I'll give just a one sentence context, which is just a little bit of like, this is describing a period of a little bit of like professional lack of direction or kind of struggle, I guess. So I'll jump into the scene. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. It's sometime Monday morning. I step away from my computer and start taking groceries out of the brown Whole Foods shopping bags. The bags have been placed on the floor by the front door, decontaminating since yesterday. I pull out an avocado. It's wet. Is that water? Not sure. I wipe it off with an IKEA dish towel. I rinse the outside of the whole avocado, dry it, and then put it on the plate with the others. I go back to the grocery bags and pull out one of the 365 creamy almond butters. There's moisture on the outside of this too. I wipe it off with the same dish towel. I start to stack it in the drawer with the others. As I do so, I notice, though, that it smells like almond butter. It shouldn't smell if it hasn't been opened, right? I pull out another unopened almond butter from the drawer. No smell. Confirmed. Something is wrong with the new one. I put it in the pantry instead of the drawer with the others. A little while later, my husband walks in wearing a new headset. He's between conference calls. He asks how I'm doing, but it's clear he's just got a second before he goes back into the other room. I inform him about the suspect almond butter. I've got things under control here, doing important work. He laughs sympathetically.
Oh, okay. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. God, it's such a relatable domestic scene, right? I think like there's like a mystery liquid, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I was trying to convey was just like the total insignificance of this thing I was trying to rationalize as being worth spending some time on. But yeah.
Okay. And why is that?
Well, I guess it was like an act of procrastination, like going, like unpacking groceries, and there's absolutely no urgency to doing that. And then, you know, and then kind of talking, like informing my husband when he walks in about what I've been doing. So it's like, yeah. So yeah, I guess it was a moment where there was a kind of like a process of this investigation, but it kind of just doesn't matter.
Okay. And so where were you going to go with it? It doesn't matter. But
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I guess it's kind of a stand-in for procrastination that I've been doing while I'm not necessarily doing other things. So I guess I don't know where it's going other than that.
If you're procrastinating, what are you procrastinating from?
There are like projects, some of which involve editing or writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're avoiding those. Why?
They all have like questions about like directions to take, decisions that have to be made about like, I don't know what level of detail to go in, but all of them involve some sort of consultation that ends up feeling kind of like hard to arrange, or just decision making by myself about how to proceed.
Okay. And so you're avoiding making decisions.
Yeah.
You're procrastinating from that. You're avoiding making decisions by dealing with your almond butter and your IKEA dish towel and your wet avocado.
Yeah.
I love it. Why not?
But I guess it was also, I mean, I guess what I kind of wanted to do was write about like the situation of then, because of working from home, and having a partner who's being productive as normal, kind of there's an extra sort of like mirror up to the procrastination that I might not hold in the same scrutiny if I was just here by myself.
Okay, so you're comparing yourself.
Yeah.
And then what happens when you do that?
What happens when I do that? I guess it's just more evident that if I've been procrastinating or not taking direction on something, I'm just more aware of it.
Yeah. So it's like this heightened awareness, or this heightened pressure to do something that you just don't feel like doing.
Yeah, or I'm not sure how to proceed on, something like that.
Okay. It's so interesting to have, with all of these stories and these various pressures and stresses right now, to have COVID in the background. It's like we all sort of get it because we have this globally shared context for everything that's bothering us, even the smallest things. We all understand that the ways that the smallest things are affecting us right now are really heightened, and that can make for a very interesting backdrop to any piece of writing. Not to be like, look on the bright side of COVID, but it is, definitely a lot of times when we're writing about something, when we're not in a global crisis, we have to think, well, why is this relevant now? What does this have to do with what's going on now? And that's automatically there in this moment in these months, right? You don't even have to say much. You mentioned the hand sanitizer and we get it. You're writing about what we're all going through right now. Okay, great. I'm gonna we're almost out of time. You know what? We only have 5 minutes, so we might get to one more person, but I wanted to just give you an opportunity to ask questions about anything in these last few minutes. If anybody has a question about writing, craft, process, the industry, anything we talked about tonight. No? Okay, then I will call on one more person. I don't know what this person's name is because it says the Glitterazzi.
It's Samantha.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Okay. Okay.
All right. My hands are shaking as I enter a nearly bare room, script in hand. The last time I did this was before I was legally able to buy my own beer, so it's a tall order to muster up any relationship with familiarity in my current situation. I stand before 3 smiling women, desperately trying to steady myself and channeling my inner Wonder Woman, trusting their smiles that I can do this, and I smile back. I feel my feet planted firmly beneath me and breathe. Suddenly, a loud, fearless bellow echoes the room. My eyes dart around this space, and I'm trying my best not to miss a beat, and soon I realize that my ears are filled with the sound of my own voice, and I almost didn't recognize it.
Okay, wow. Am I the only one who's not sure what you were doing?
It was an audition.
Okay, for what?
The Vagina Monologues.
Oh, okay. Cool. Did you get it?
I did.
Wow.
So
when is the Vagina Monologues coming?
It was actually last year. So it's done now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That must have been fun.
It was a blast.
That's a classic.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we feel the fear. We feel like in the echoing room, and the that you hadn't done it since you were for a very long time, and this was something like we didn't really get an explanation of why that is, like why there had been so many years from the last audition, right?
Yeah. And somebody else had put in the chat, like, how to get in all the backstory, like explaining stuff. And I have actually the same question.
Oh, how to get backstory in?
Yeah.
To a scene.
Right.
Okay, well, there are several tricks for backstory. So the first thing that I think you want to know about backstory is that readers generally don't want it. They want front story as often as possible. So you only want to put backstory in when it's absolutely necessary. When is it absolutely necessary? To explain something that's going on in the present that doesn't make sense without backstory. And then the trick becomes, how quickly can you give the backstory, right? How, you don't need to go all the way back, hopefully, for something like that. You wouldn't need to go all the way back to, the first time you decided you wanted to try acting or something like that. You might just be able to gloss over it in a sentence or two. Like I had auditioned, my last audition was 10 years ago when the director told me not to waste my time or something like that, or, whatever. And then we sort of get the story. Right? The other thing I want to say about backstory is that it can be really interesting to put backstory in as a way to create suspense in the front story. So, for example, if something really, let's say you're about to make a big decision, or something dramatic is about to happen, you can pause the story there and give backstory, because the reader's going to rush through it to get back to the front story. You sort of just have to play with it. But in general, you want to hide the wires, because backstory on its own for no good reason or for not a good enough reason is boring. So you were doing the right thing by staying in the front story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Awesome. Thanks.
Can you read those last 3 sentences again?
My eyes dart around the space that I'm in, and I'm trying my hardest not to miss a beat. I try my hardest not to miss a beat, and then realize my ears are filled with the sound of my own voice, and I almost didn't recognize it.
Okay, so I really like that last line. But your eyes darting around. Now, whose head are we in?
Mine.
Exactly. We're in your head. So if your eyes are darting around, what should happen for us as readers?
You'd be seeing different things.
We would be seeing yeah, because if your eyes are darting around, you're seeing stuff. So let us see it too. That's where we can get good details.
Okay.
Concrete details, right?
Okay.
All right. It is time to part. Thank you so much for coming. And again, please, please, please make a little donation to Witness to Witness. If you can, read all about it on the, at the link. It's really an incredible organization. And I would love for you to, even give $1 or whatever you can spare. Again, if you can't, that's okay. I know you would if you could. Thank you so much for coming. If you would like to continue to work with me in any capacity, please shoot me an email, and have a beautiful evening.
Thank you, folks.